Hi, and welcome back to the Legends on Demand Summit. I'm so excited to have you with us. We have another incredible speaker waiting in the wings to share with her lessons, her story, her journey, so that you can see her human. You can realize that everything that you desire, it is all possible. None of us have the blueprint, none of us have the answers, none of us have the secret sauce that we're all looking for. But what we have is our own lessons, our own codes, and our own experiences. And when we learn those from others, that's how we collapse time. And that's how we really step into our own path and our own purpose. So I have the amazing Ansua waiting, and she is a certified coach specializing in life and spiritual coaching for women in midlife. So Ansua, I am going to hand the stage over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Claire. And I would like to start on a little bit of a morbid note. Please hang in there with me. Imagine you're on your deathbed. What is it that you're going to think of when you reflect back on your life? And chances are you're not going to think about how much money you made, what are the successes that you had, but you're just going to think about how much happiness you had in life, right? And that is what makes up our human experience. And our time here on earth is so precious, and all the experiences that we have that shape and define us, our paths that we take, how we move through life. And there is one thing that is certain, the one thing that all of us as human beings desire is that we all want happiness. And when you think on that, just let that sit in for a while, right? Let that settle. So you're on the deathbed, you're thinking about all the happiness, you're thinking about what happy life you led. Now, happiness is a very curious thing because we all think that in some form or another, we need to pursue it, we need to find it, we need to capture it, we need to store it. But that's actually not how it works. And yet, there it is, the goal that we want so much, such that when the time comes, when the time on our earth is over, that is what we all want to be able to say, that I had a happy life, right? And happiness is actually there, and I'm quite sure you will all agree with this, in little things in life, in all the glimpses that we get, the smile of a loved one, or maybe the smile of a stranger on the street, a cup of coffee, a bunch of flowers, the mother's hug. But most of all, we're always trying to look for this emotion that we cannot describe in our relationships, because relationships is that what makes us human. So I'm going to talk to you today about some lessons that I have learned on my journey about happiness. And it is my wish, my ardent wish, that by the end of this talk, you will get a little deeper understanding of this happiness, and you will have some tools that you can live this by. And most lessons, like all lessons learned, are always learned the hard way, as I suspect that we all do this on our journey on this earth school, right? So let's dig in. Lesson number 1 that I learned is that happiness is not the goal that you pursue, but the path that you're on. In the midst of COVID, so my extremely long marriage of 27 years ended in a very, very, very brutal and a very bad way, a painful way, right? Now, just to give a little bit of a context to this, and I'm not saying this because I want to generate any sympathy from you, but such that you understand where I'm coming from, is I was very young when I got married, and younger still when I met my now ex-husband, and I had a family with kids. So my life consisted of moving from my parents and knowing my parents, and then moving into a family life with my husband, forming a family, having kids. That was everything that I knew. And when that stopped, that came to a halt. I had already given up my job the year before because I actually wanted to do something different. I had no job. My finances were a complete wreck because I was in very dire financial state. I had no partner. My kids were already grown up. They had left home, and I was in a foreign country where I had no family. So just so that you understand the context that I'm talking about, right? Now, during these phases, I was diagnosed with very severe depression, and everything started to change. Even bodily function started to change, something that I didn't think was possible. I stopped eating for a really long time, and all kind of things, right, that were happening. Now, something very curious began, and it was almost like a sign, like a nudge in that massive darkness that I was in. Is I started to wake up at 3 a.m. every morning, And this happened like clockwork. It was not something I was doing. It was not something I was intending on. It just annoyed the hell out of me in the beginning. And then I got curious, and that's because I remembered that in my tradition, and I come from India, the 3 a.m. in the morning is considered the Brahma Muhurta, and that just means it's the hour of the creator. There is an extra surge of light energy during this time that kind of propels you on the spiritual path. Now, I kind of had an inclination of what this was. I was not totally concerned about it. I was just annoyed that I was waking up at 3 o'clock, and then I started getting curious. And then I thought, well, now that I'm up, I can actually leave the bed, right? And that's what I started to do. So I left the bed, I went to the window, and I spent nights just watching the night sky. And I would look at the stars and I would look at the moon. And it wasn't after a while that I thought, well, I could start writing again. Because I have always been a writer, but I didn't write in a continuous way, in a way that I would have liked to in my married life. So I started writing. Now, this writing was not just putting my thoughts down. At first, it was pretty incoherent, but it started to take a form. It became a conversation between me and the sky. And I know that may sound very odd, but it led to a lot of self-introspection and self-inquiry, right? And I felt for the first time in a really long time so much of peace and joy and happiness in my heart that the silence had given me. Now, of course, this didn't last for a long time because I always then went back when the memories started to come back. And I truly believe that you can actually never get rid of the memories. What is important is where you choose to put your attention to. And this is what I learned, that the more I practiced the self-introspection, the writing, the more I combined that, for example, with yoga, which I practiced for a long time, with meditation, which I had started to do curiously enough 1 year before all of this happened, I began to put the dots together, right? To see this is why I had this massive urge to start meditation. Oh, this is why I'm getting back on the mat. Oh, this is why I'm practicing what I'm practicing. And what was happening was that these moments of happiness became more, and which was, of course, differentiated from the moments of this despondency that I was feeling. That's completely normal as well, but they became less. So the attention started to go more towards this path that I was on, which was leading me somewhere. I didn't know where. I had absolutely no clue. And to be really honest, even to this day, I really don't know. I'm just really happy to be on this path. But that became more, and the other part became less. So I learned that whatever I call happiness, I can call it in any moment. It's a choice I'm making. Does this work all the time? Percent. Can I do this all the time? No, because I'm still a student. I'm still learning. This is a process. And every time I drift, which happens quite a lot, I know that I have the ability to focus back on something that really fills me with joy and happiness, right? And so that was the lesson, that the happiness was actually the path and not the lesson. Number 2 that I learned, which is something I did not practice in my marriage. So this was from the lack of it that I learned this lesson, is that in every relationship, there is an I, there is an you, and there is a we. And the trick is to find where happiness lies in this dance. And it most often plays out in love relationships, but it happens in every relationship that you have, whether it's between a child and a parent, whether it's with your coworkers, whether it's with your friends. But for the purpose of this talk, let's just stick to the love relationships, right? For this is where it plays out most prominently. And if you are currently in a relationship, think about a challenging situation in your life, right? Something that you're going through, a crisis or a challenge. Let's just take an example. You come back from work, you're really exhausted, you're really tired. Your partner has done a lot of chores, but has forgotten to maybe take out the garbage or take the dog for a walk. Think of the reaction you're going to have. And that's a pivotal moment. And you don't want to overlook this, because your reaction will be probably for the first couple of times that you ignore it, that you kind of say, well, okay, not all that bad. You don't address the issue, but you will have a growing sense of annoyance with every time this repeats itself. Now, after a couple of times, I'm willing to bet, and I've seen this happen many times in my work as well as with friends, that this is going to erupt. You are going to say something. You will state your case. You're going to say how hard you work, how horrible your boss was, the challenges you had at work, and how you're always cleaning up. Now you're operating from the I zone. When you do this, think of the reaction that your partner is going to have. Your partner is first going to be surprised because obviously you haven't said anything for some time, right? So the general idea is, well, you're accepting it or may or not even be aware of this problematic. Your partner's reaction is going to be to start arguing for themselves, to say things like, well, I'm always doing this. Well, you're not noticing this. Now your partner is operating from their I zone, so from the you zone, right? So in short, you're both arguing for your happiness in your zone. But what we need to do is to start moving towards the we zone and to say, how can we argue for our happiness? Because remember, relationship is not one against the other. It is two for each other. And that's when the happiness starts to shift into this we zone, because that's where compassion lies, that's where understanding lies, that's where listening, responding, and always, always, always still loving. And in this regards, I really love the analogy that Mel Robbins gives, and she talks about the relationship as being a boat, right? And every time there is a conflict or a challenge, that you ask yourself or ask the partner, are we in the same boat? And I think that's such a fundamental way of just coming back to a common ground, to say, are we in this we zone? Are we operating from here? Because then you have a chance. Because remember, this is a person you're building a life with. You have a vision with. You have a shared purpose. Now you have a chance to truly build something extraordinary that's going to serve you. So that was lesson number 2. Now, having talked about these different entities of you and me, the next one is going to actually come as a surprise, or maybe not. Lesson number 3 is that the self and the others are not separate. And thus my happiness, or the lack of it, is going to have an effect on the rest. And this needs a little bit of an explanation. Again, the lesson came from yoga and meditation that I practice, that I'm a practitioner of. And I'm quite sure that you all know that we are all made of energy, right? Energy just in different forms. But it literally took the practices to bring this from the head, to bring it down to the heart space. And the more life that I live, the more I actually realize how connected we are, and which is much more than how separated we are. So we are all energies, just having different forms. It's like if I'm the same energy and I just cast a stone in the water, it's going to cause ripple effects, right? And that's exactly what the energy does. So the more happiness that I can feel within myself, the more this is going to have an effect on others. In this regards, think of how when you are, let's say you are in an agitated state or anxious or one of the lower vibration states, right? Think about the people that you attract in your life at that moment. You're going to have in your orbit people who match this vibration. And that's because that's what you're putting out. And that's what you're receiving back. And I can tell you one thing, that during the years that I was struggling, and I could have murdered my ex, not that I would do that. I was even thinking about writing a book, 21 Ways to Kill Your Husband. Of course, I didn't do that. But I realized that all the rage that I had inside was not enough. The sadness I had inside was not enough. The grief that I had inside, that was just not enough. There was still one missing piece. And I came to this in one of Tara Brach's meditation, which, by the way, I highly recommend. If you are into meditating or you want to start, please look her up. She's wonderful. And it's the meditation where she practices something that she calls RAIN. So RAIN. Now, RAIN is an acronym. It stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. Now, you might say recognize, allow, investigate, nurture for what? Or of what, right? It's of radical compassion. And that's when the penny dropped. That's when I understood how I need to extend a radical, non-judgmental compassion to myself to realize that the other person requires the same, because there is no separation. Now, if there is no separation, you may ask, and you're right to do so, that how is it that people will then react differently? And that's the will, right? That they can. That's the choice that they make. So if people choose to behave and act in a certain way, that's the choice that they do. I choose to extend my compassion. I choose to extend my joy. I choose to my happiness, not just to one person, but to everyone. Because I know that what I practice will have an effect on others. It's the ripple effect that I already talked about, right? Now, remember that this is, and I keep saying this, is that this is a process, it's a practice. It sounds radical, and it's not always doable because it's hard. It's difficult practice to nurture, and that's also okay. But this is just an invitation to see the happiness that we feel and the effect that this is going to have on others. And simply put, if you put it in very simple terms, when we are happy, we are nicer to other people. We are nicer to other people. They feel good, and so on, right? You understand how this works. It is necessary for us to develop this, and for the very simple reason is that this gives us a chance to really build connections in a very authentic way. Now, it doesn't, of course, mean that you put a smiley face when things are off tangent. No. But even when things are difficult, even when things are challenging, you can still have a radical compassion for yourself, beginning with yourself and then extend it and see how the ripple effect goes, right? So now that we are coming to the end of this talk, then let me remind you of the 3 lessons, and I hope that can serve you as much as it has served me. Lesson number 1 is that happiness is not the goal, but the path. Number 2 is that in every relationship there is an I, there is a you, there is a we, and the trick is to find where the happiness lies in this dance. And the third one is that the self and others are not separate, and therefore my happiness or my lack of it is going to affect the rest. I am still very much a student on this path. My journey is still unfolding. I make lots of mistakes. I'm picking myself up every single time when I'm beaten down, but I'm remembering my truth more and more because I'm practicing this more and more. So I'm remembering who I am and who I'm here to serve. And that fills me with happiness, and I truly, truly feel very blessed that I can share this with every single one of you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Ansua, what a beautiful message. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
you guys watching and listening can resonate so much with that. How many times have you sat there and thought, I'll be happy when?
Yeah.
I'll be happy when this happens, when that happens, when I achieve this goal, when I hit this milestone. And we spend what becomes our entire life. And I loved what you said in the very beginning, starting with a deathbed, because it's something that I think about a lot. And it can feel maybe a touch morbid, but it's a wake up call, right?
Yes, it is. It is, absolutely. And the thing is that, because that's the ultimate truth. We are going to die. And it's good to start there and to reverse engineer to see, right? And that's what we are all going for. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And so I would love to ask you a couple questions which you guys maybe watching are already thinking. So I'm going to try and get into your heads and get the answers from Ansua that you are sat there contemplating on. So Ansua, if someone is listening to your talk right now and they are maybe having those thoughts that I just highlighted, I'm waiting, things are tight right now, they're tough, it's a tricky season for me. I'll be happy when.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say to that kind of mindset, and when we can find ourselves in that trap of delaying our happiness?
Yeah. So, well, one of the things that I would say is that it is very difficult to make a sudden 180-degree shift, right? That's practically not possible, because then we introduce a lot of resistance into this. So that means if you imagine you have a stick, and on the one end of the stick you have the happiness that you would like to have, you have a dream, you have an idea of what this is, and you are on the other end, it's not going to be possible for you to make this jump. What is possible, however, and I love this, is something that Martha Beck always calls a 1-degree turn. And that just means instead of turning 180, just turn 1. So try to find the next possible good feeling thought that you can find from the place that you are in. So just as an example, if you have these anxious feelings, right? I mean, it depends on the anxiety level that you have as well. So one thing that I always tell my clients is listen to your body. If your body is feeling very anxious, just give yourself a hug. And it's incredible how much self-touch can heal. It's wonderful. So after you give yourself a hug and you have moved to that 1 degree, think about what could be one more. For example, it could be just making a cup of tea. It could be going out for a walk. It could be something where you might think, well, this is not leading me to happiness, but trust me, it actually is. It actually is. It's subtle, it's small, but it is going to slowly get you to where you want to get. So it's remembering this 1 degree instead of the 180 degree. That's the advice that I would give.
That is so powerful, because we have this tendency to jump, don't we?
Yeah.
To say, well, I don't want to be here, I want to be there. And we forget all of the micro steps in the process.
Exactly.
So powerful. So, Ansua, I would like to ask you, being part of a Real and the Raw movement, being part of the Legends Summit stage, using the Raw framework as part of your talk, what does this all mean to you personally and professionally? And why was it so important to you to be a part of this movement?
Well, I guess it's the vulnerability factor. It's the part that you can come as you are. Nothing is required. You don't need to add anything. You didn't need not to subtract anything. It's a non-judgmental space that I truly appreciate a lot. And thank you so much for creating this. And I think that this is something where we can most be our most authentic selves. I guess that's what's important, because that's what's missing. Everything is otherwise so curated and practiced and rehearsed, and it always needs to fall into a certain given idea of how things should be. But I guess we all forget to be ourselves.
Yeah.
And this is a good space to do this. I guess that's what moved me.
Beautiful. And I would love to ask you, for any of the other speakers watching or women leaders who want to start sharing their voice and their story and their message, but maybe they're having some resistance around it. How has the Raw framework helped you? And what would be any kind of tips or hints or pointers that you would give to anyone watching to get them on that journey?
Well, I think the important thing that you did in the framework were the questioning part, the journaling part, right? And I guess that always helps quite a lot, because I am a very big fan of journaling, and I always encourage my clients to also journal a lot on their journey. I guess that a lot of things unfold in a very organic way rather than in a forced way. And that helped a lot. And I would just suggest, people who are having problems finding their voice, is to start writing down and to look behind what is actually happening, because most of the time what's happening on the surface is just the surface level, but there is something bigger that's happening behind. And I guess that's the point where we need to come up and to kind of question this, right? And the more we question, the more answers we're going to get. I guess that's what I would suggest people do.
So powerful. So you guys watching, you don't need stage experience. You don't need to have everything together. You just need yourself, your story, and your desire to want to share it. So I love that. And so can you please tell everyone how they can come and get into your world and what that might look like for them as well?
Yeah, well, because I'm a coach, and I love working with women, specifically women in midlife, because I think we have a specific set of challenges, and I love to work with these women. So if people want to get in touch with me, so my website is a good place to start. That's a great place. I would encourage everybody to hop onto my newsletter. So I have a newsletter where I send out regular news of what's happening, but also with tips and resources, tips to my blogs and the blogs that I write, my Instagram page where I also post. And I'm truly excited about this. I'm going to launch my tool, my online tool this February. So it's called Grace. It's a virtual 1-day retreat for women, specifically designed for women. Yeah, so it is. There are audio files that I'm going to guide the women throughout the day. There is a handbook, there's a preparation, things that they need to prepare. So this is meant really for someone who's just either beginning on the journey of self-care or doesn't know how to start. So I have meditation practices, yoga practices, DIY spa recipes, and also recipes for lunch and drinks, and so that you can feel good about yourself. And I think because as women, we take so much care of others that we kind of forget to take care of ourselves. And more often than not, it's not possible for all of us to leave and go to a retreat somewhere else because either we have children or we have financial constraints. And so I thought of creating this 1-day virtual tool which can help everybody who's looking to practice this. So I'm really excited about this too.
Oh my gosh. And for you guys watching, February has already been and gone. So you
Yeah.
can go and get that right now. That
Yeah.
is incredible. Amazing. We're going
Yeah.
to put all of those links right down below Ansua's talk. So you can head right there right now and go and see what that looks like for you. Ansua, thank you so much for sharing with us all today. It's such a beautiful story, a beautiful share, and a beautiful message that we can all really, really sit with. Make
Thank
yourself
you.
happy now.
Yeah.
Ansua, thank you so much. And for you
Thank
guys,
you.
I hope that you are enjoying the Legends Summit. Please reach out to the speakers, let them know how their talks landed with you, share it with your friends, your clients, your colleagues, your connections, and share with the world how you are stepping into becoming a real and a raw leader. Until next time, go and head to your next on-demand talk right now, and I will see you over there. Bye for now.